question here.
Does anybody on the panel, or possibly even in the room, one of the people mentioned that Turk's gold money might be a potential reasonable place for low commissions to have your precious metals stored. Anybody have a thought, what are there some either dealers for physical purchase of gold that have low premiums currently in the last few weeks, or internationalizing storage of their bullion, such as either Perth or Kitco or Gold Gilly? Now, what is the Bit company just got dinged? What's the name of it?
Bitcoin.
Yeah, and so they got dinged. So I'm curious, what might be a safe place to store at low commission storage?
First off, I need to point out my bias when I mention Gold Money. I've got a relationship with them. I've got an affiliated relationship with them, so I always want to point that out. Bullion Vault is another quite reasonable place to hold money. In contrast, the Perth Mint, which I am biased against, but I'll point out why. Their storage fees are something like 7 to 10 times higher than what gold money costs. They don't have allocated storage. They're selling you certificates, actually, which is a liability. It's not actual physical ownership if you buy some of their products. So when you look at these storage companies, you need to understand, what it is they're doing and how and why, and is the gold really there? Is it allocated? Is it in your name? Is it audited? Gold Money and Bullion Vault both are.
Anyone else on the best places to store gold, like Gold Money, Bullion Vault?
In the ground.
In the ground? Next question.
Let me, since we talked about in the ground, Marshal.
You get that cabin up in northern Idaho. You lay in the supply of food, guns, ammunition, and then you go out. Idaho's an interesting developing gold mining area. It's very favorable, the state is, to gold mining. And then you get a little bit of equipment. You go out, you mine your own gold, you store it in your cabin, and you're set. And a lot of these questions that have come up with problems and issues are going to bypass you, or you'll bypass them.
Real quick, since Bitcoin was brought up, tomorrow morning at about 9 o'clock, a few of us are going to be rendezvousing for breakfast in a restaurant. Anybody who stays over is in the area is welcome to join us. We're going to have kind of a quasi-informal session titled, the theme is going to be Building an Economic Lifeboat. And one of the things we'll talk about is how you can do different things that are kind of off the beaten path to take more control of your own economic future, prepare for bad times and that type of thing. We will talk about alternative currencies. Bitcoin would not be a choice of mine. And basically, how many people in this room remember the name National Commodity and Barter Association? Anybody? Dr. Warren mentioned, we talked about this downstairs today. Anything of a large scale that attempts to poke a finger in the eye of the Fed is doomed at this point in time. Anything you're going to do as far as an alternative currency, ideally, is on a local level with people that you know. We're going to talk about that tomorrow morning, too.
I have, if I can get in here for just a second, I've got an interview with the guy who bills himself as Bitcoin Jesus. and actually, I thought Bitcoin was a scam. I really did. And I asked James Turk and Geoff Turk at Gold Money, and they said, no, it's not a scam. We researched this. The algorithm is actually very, very sound. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, what can you buy with it? And then people say to me, well, I was sitting here and think actually myself, well, what can I buy with gold? I mean, where can I, go and you can't go to the grocery store. But there's a place out there now that's selling, and they just started, I can't think of the name of it, Bitcoin something exchange, but they sell 500,000 products, including some high-end cameras. And this guy, I called up just on a lark, and I'm going to, this is all going to be in the interview Sunday night. And I actually talked to the owner of this company, and he's a libertarian. He fled the United States for Japan because he was, convicted of, some really ridiculous things. But anyway, he is keeping 100% of his profits, from this business, online business, and he's doing a really big volume now in Bitcoins. I mean, that is a true believer. So there's people that believe in this. And so if you're interested in Bitcoins, just look for my interview next week. It was a fun interview. No, he didn't change my mind other than to convince me that Bitcoins are real, but along the lines of what I just heard here yet, when you're competing with the Fed, my big fear on Bitcoins would be, all it takes is for someone to come in and say, you know what, this is illegal, and the value suddenly goes to zero.
We've got a related, go ahead.
I would just like to add one thing on Bitcoins. I've interviewed Jeff Berwick, who's been on national television on a number of the major networks, talking about Bitcoin. In fact, Rick Santelli credited him with creating Bitcoin, which he denies. I mean, it was created by, I think, by a Japanese mathematician. It is actually, I think, far more legitimate, honestly, than the U.S. dollar is, because there is a limit. The amount that can be mined is something like 21 million Bitcoins. So in a way, it's much more legitimate than our currency is that's backed by nothing. Moreover, Jeff and a number of people are putting in ATM machines, Bitcoin ATM machines, or they're planning to. I don't know where they're at with it. I talked to them 3 weeks ago or so after the Cyprus crisis, and they were going to put one in Cyprus, and put one in California.
It's
they
a
would be able to
perfect
sell. They'd be able to sell gold and other other merchandise, as Mitch was saying.
It's a perfect spot. Cyprus is a perfect spot. Now think about it why. Cyprus has capital controls. So someone in Cyprus wants to get their money out. What does he do? He goes exchange them for Bitcoins, and then he flies out of the country and exchanges the Bitcoins for any other currency he wants to do.
Exactly.
And there's actually currency controls in China now. There's restrictions on how much yuan you can take out of China. So how are we going to get around that?
As a matter of fact,
Exchange the Bitcoins, fly out of the country, exchange them in whatever currency you want.
as a matter of fact, that's why Bitcoins just took off like mad, was with the Cyprus incident. And it was interesting that gold managed to go up about $3 that day and went down $3 the following day. Why didn't gold really benefit from Cyprus is a good question.
Well, I think that the gold didn't benefit from Cyprus because the Cyprus Central Bank came out and said they were going to sell in the open market.
Sure, works out
And
very well.
that
Because
the
the last thing you want people to do is to start taking money out of their bank accounts and buying gold, because that would send a signal, and this whole thing of animal spirits would go away, right? So you've got to manage the animal spirits of all this.
We've got a related question here.
You said that the moment any competing currency or like Bitcoin challenges the establishment, they pull the carpet out. Observation or speculation on states coining gold and silver coins and making it legal tender. How far do you think that's going to go?
I think that has some traction. The more local you can get things like that, the better. Keep something in mind. What all of us that have a desire, I mean, this goes to saving our society and our culture. This is not just about investing. And one of the things we want to try and work toward is a situation where it would be like the Fed throws a party but nobody shows up. We want to be able incrementally to take back control of our economic lives, our commerce, and so forth. I've mentioned numerous times, I know on this panel in the past, the greatest story to this day I've ever heard of an alternative to using the Federal Reserve's monopoly dollars. Look up on the internet Ithaca Hours. Okay? I've met Paul Glover, I've known him for years, he's a folk hero back there. They set up in the early 90s a community currency that has been wildly successful. It's been copied many places. This lady with her hand up right here was talking about a digital alternative to that, where people now are looking at the fact, I'm not going to mention the authors' names, it would be controversial, but keep in mind money is one of two things. Either man is made for money, and we have to serve the moneyed interest, which we do today, or you take the idea that money is made for man and should be of some kind of form and or substance that we get our needs met, we can do commerce and so forth. And a lot more people than you folks realize all over the world now. Greece, there has been an explosion of local currencies and barter systems. okay?
May I-
This is what we want to encourage, and my concern about Bitcoin is that it's too big a thing. There's already been attacks on Bitcoin before this latest spike, that you've had people, money laundering, drug trafficking, and stuff like
That's
that.
how they'll make it legal.
I've been at the other end of the federal government, as some of you know. They don't need much to come in.
That's right.
So you want to keep this on a local level, keep it manageable. God bless the states that are coming out with trying to do this. I hope they succeed.
I don't think they're going to succeed for the following reason. You look at the U.S. population, it's 300 million people. I would say that the individuals in this room are outliers in what they're doing with their own portfolios and going to the physical currency. So the U.S. culture and Western cultures as a society don't see gold as a value of wealth. I think that if this occurred in a country like China or in India, that would be much more likely to gain traction because the end receiver of that currency would actually see that as a currency, whereas I don't think the mass public in the United States sees gold as a currency on the average citizen. So I don't think that would work out on the longer term for the masses.
I think it's coming.
I think what's
And-
necessary is that you really need a crisis.
Right.
Like our mayor, His Honor, Godfather, Ron, he said, you never waste a what? You never waste a crisis. Any type of major bill that's ever been through was a crisis. When they wanted to confiscate the gold, a crisis. When they wanted to close the bank, that was a crisis. When they wanted to put the Patriot bill through, it was a crisis. You have these types of situations, and you can put your agenda to and just shove it down the people's throats. So it's now it works the opposite way too. I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. I mean, if there's a situation that occurs where this really becomes obviously not worth it, I'm talking the paper, the dollar. I think that type of pain will drive folks just by utility to listen, I gotta find me some gold or some silver to maintain my purchasing power, because you got $10 gasoline, you got stuff going through the roof, I can't retire. I'm not able to keep pace with the cost of living. You know, if you look at the cost of living for the last 10 years, or the wage for the last, since 1970, it's went up what? Minuscule compared to commodities. Silver's went up 7 times in the last 10 years, and you barely got, 30% or wage increase in the last 10 years? It's just, there's no way the middle class can survive under the fractional reserve system because they have no basic income.
What happens when the entire middle class suddenly thinks they need to own gold?
It soars.
It soars.
There's a bill in Arizona. I'm not
I have
sure
an
the
answer
status
for
of
that
it.
one.
We got a related question.
When the entire middle class doesn't have gold or silver, they can do time banking. He was talking about Ithaca hours. I'm a member of a time banks at wall.timebanks.org. You can start time banks in your local community, that particular one, and I'm a member of some other time banks. The more that you join, the more that you can work with other people. If you need a service, you got a service to offer. Even if all you can do is sew on buttons, you can put in there, I have a service to sew on buttons, or I have a service I can drive parcels across town or something. It doesn't have to be big. It can be a dentist, it can be a doctor, it can be any occupation, and you trade your service for someone else's service. And then when it comes to objects, there's organizations like freecycle.org where people are giving away things that they no longer need and letting other people take them. That's kind of a gifting thing, not like that MLM type of gifting, but it's a similar thing that works. But it's a local community thing that you can do for your community to get them going. And when it comes to crises, you look at Greece, time banks are going crazy there because it's the only thing that they have, and it works. And if time banks can get started now, before the crises may hit, and we're all much better off doing that anyway, because when you can trade your service for someone else's, you're going to gain in the bargain. When you're unemployed, you can work. You can work with somebody else, do something that you can do, even if it isn't what you normally do. You know, I'll put buttons up, sewing buttons up, even though I did computer project management. I can't find a job in that, but I can sew on buttons for people, and I can get some other things. I got dental work done.
Any thoughts on time banking?
That's what we're going to talk. One of the things we'll talk about tomorrow morning. But a couple of these guys also made the point that Yeah, the average American doesn't identify so much with gold and silver. We're all a bunch of cranks and Looney Tunes here talking about things like that. But they can identify with what this lady spoke of, all right? What it's going to take for the rest of them, okay? You remember the first modern day Batman movie where Jack Nicholson played the Joker? I can say of this country, and I'm sure you can too, what he said of Gotham City. This country needs an enema. Okay? And people are going to get shocked further than what we saw happen in 2008 and beyond what's this slow, dull ache that we have of a Main Street economy. That's going to get a lot of these things going. So as this lady just said, a lot of people, thankfully, more than a lot of you folks realize, are taking things into their own hands and they're building this economic lifeboat. It doesn't have to be just based around silver and gold. Those are elements of money and barter. It doesn't have to be just that.
Any other thoughts on that subject?
Very briefly, back on the previous topic about whether or not gold and silver was going to come back in currency. There was a bill in the, first off, Nevada passed something, but I didn't like the wording of that. The one in Arizona was pretty reasonable, actually. They said it just let merchants, if they wanted to, didn't force them to, accept gold and silver as money. I think something like that, a very reasonable proposal, is the way to get the idea back into people's hands. That gold and silver is real money, is what it ought to be. I've not seen whether or not that bill passed. Does anyone here have anyone here know about it?
Yeah, it passed. It passed.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, I'm no fan of the fractional reserve system, but how, as a practical matter,